Captive World by Margarita Chopenko. Part 2. Deep Above. Chapter 1. A bright star illuminated the darkness of space with a wide slash, cutting through it and gathering particles of light around itself. Magnetized, they flew together and instantly stuck to it, increasing its size and defining its shape. Satan knew that in a matter of seconds he would see the Sovereign's gargantuan body, so massive as to be beyond comprehension. It was always majestic and unsettling. Satan waited, hovering in one of the thin voids, watching the Sovereign's movement and transformation. The spherical edges of Satan's slippery body swayed in the dull darkness of space. His only two eyes, on the left side of his body, which at that moment could be called his head, glowed yellow with varying brightness. The mass of light grew larger. You are not so fast today," he sneered to himself, rolling into a thicker space. His sticky, jelly-like, fetid body was now spreading and swaying in a field of twinkling constellations. "Why did he call me? Is it not clear that they don't need him? They need me." The light was approaching and supplanting the darkness. Thousands of brilliant sparks in an endless stream from different sources rushed in one direction before spiraling as they settled, giving way to other streams. Satan, fascinated, watched this scene unfold with full attention. Soon the light became blinding, so much so that he turned off all his visual sensors, leaving only auditory ones. A chill of fear swept through his entire body. He began to shake. He knew and expected it. As always, he became lost in this stream of endlessly moving sparks, not knowing whether he was standing still or flying somewhere. He could not see anything, and only by the sudden severe drop in temperature and the magnetic movement of the air could he assume that the Sovereign was already here. Finally, the cold stabilized, and Satan realized that the transition was over. He readied himself to listen, lowering the level of his auditory sensors to 2 out of 100. He was trembling in anticipation of this audience. A voice boomed from all sides, at once overwhelming and highly authoritarian. "I hear complaints from Earth. Why is there so much slander and cruelty? I gave people reason and all the conditions necessary so that they could enjoy life, developing spiritually and intellectually. Why is there so much suffering?" Satan was silent, waiting for his turn to speak. In the pause that followed, he spoke ingratiatingly. "But, Sovereign, in addition to reason, you have endowed people with ambition. Excessive pride pushes them to unworthy actions." "Ambition is an engine for development," objected the Sovereign. "Yes, but what should ambitious and lazy people do?" "Laziness and pride are sins. Are they not aware? Do they not go to church and keep my commandments?" "They do, but I dare say I don't have such a high opinion of their spiritual consciousness. Rotten people. Envious, greedy, nasty." "All?" "No, but many." "I need examples of unjust crimes. Bring me 3 cases from different walks of life. I'll give you 3 days. I want to see their problems." "I will do everything you command, as always," Satan said subserviently, imitating a certain figure of a bow and curling up at the same time. On the gigantic palm of the Sovereign, in the hollow, somewhere between his thumb and forefinger. Chapter 2. Finally, the audience was over, and the long-awaited darkness returned, bringing with it the lost comfort of warmth and tranquility. Silver sparks were still flying chaotically in the air, but they were slowing down, disappearing somewhere. "I hear complaints from Earth." He recalled discontentedly words from the Sovereign, and immediately continued. "Of course they do, if there is a hole in its seal, but not for much longer. I found the vanished piece." 3 days? Satan thought. "I'll manage." And then angrily, "You won't hear any more complaints after that." He looked at the earth, that little blue ball, and spat out evil. "This is my precious. Yes, you created it, but you have many. This one is mine." And then smugly, "I swaddled it so that you will soon forget about it. Not a single sigh will leak out. I will seal this hole, and there will be no need to explain anything." Self-satisfied, he moved his countless limbs, resembling translucent bull bladder balls. Ranging in different sizes, from very small to large, they were partially filled with some kind of liquid. Some burst and oozed a sticky liquid emitting a stench. He closed his eyes and remembered recent events, his last reincarnation as a Black Knight. The game continuing. The echoing hall of the cathedral. No. Before. He must see his irresistibility. Mirror. He is the Black Knight, awesomely handsome. Raven black hair gently flowing around his pale, aristocratic face and falling on his strong shoulders, stretched into a narrow vest and purple tunic. A wide leather belt wraps tightly around the waist of his young body. A black cloak hides the hilt of the sword under his left hand. On his legs, tall riding boots with sturdy high heels and spurs. He stood and turned to look at his reflection in a tall mirror. Here is his flawless profile, his proudly turned head. With his hand in a slashed sleeve, he covered his head with a wide-brimmed hat decorated with feathers. What to do? They wear this here, he thought prudently, looking askance at his reflection. His expression from under the hat was cold and mocking. What about this? He suggested, and raised an eyebrow slightly. Yes, that's better. If something gives him away, it will be his eyes. This cannot be allowed, like last time. He was so close to the goal. The vanished piece was already in his hands. He almost had it. But the yellow flash passing from his left eye to the right, it was impossible not to notice, and he was forced to settle, offended, hiding behind his hat. In fact, the magnetic impulse passed through all his eyes, but only this pair was visible, which belonged to different systems of his body, in which one system was subordinate to the other. The timing of the pulse was off by a split second, but this was enough to discern. Chapter 3. Heavy doors opened, letting the Black Knight into a spacious hall. Near the high window stood a woman. A bright blue dress of dense silk, beautifully fit to her slim figure, extended out like a bell to the bottom. From under its short sleeves, at the bottom edge decorated with gold stars, her hands were clothed in a silk silver-pink smock, almost platinum in color. The same stars decorated the edge of her neckline. A silvery pink belt, loosely wrapped around her hips, hung its free end down in the middle of the dress, almost to the bottom. A string of pink pearls complemented the outfit. She was evidently waiting for the visitor. Without turning her head, which was clad in the truncated cone of a hennin, with a transparent veil covering her forehead and eyebrows, and falling to her shoulders, she continued to look out the window. He approached her, slowly, with graceful reverence, holding his hat in his hand and lowering his eyes. According to court etiquette, he made respectful flourishes with his feet. She silently closed her eyes. Goosebumps rose over her body. At once she felt burning cold. This was her third meeting with the Count, and every time such a strange reaction, she thought, squinting her eyes at his head of black hair, bowed down in this obsequious pose. She felt danger from this man. Something subtly touched her aura and made all the hairs on her body rise. The only thing worse was that she knew it would all go away once he started talking. "Your Majesty," he whispered passionately, as she gestured for him to rise. Inexplicably, a subtle scent flowed and enveloped her. She did not know this smell. It was new. She could not determine what it resembled, but its intoxicating spice prevented her from thinking. She floated on its wave. His breathing was close. "No!" she silently yelled to herself, and, turning around, went to the table with the documents. Slowly, she pulled the letter out of the hem of her sleeve and said in a firm voice, "I read the letter that you delivered to me last time. Is my husband's brother aiming for the throne, while the king still lives?" Her hand trembled from the audacity of such an assumption. And then quietly, "I do not believe this." She once again glanced at the letter. "Yes, I recognize his handwriting, but I do not believe it." "Your son is in danger. Don't you feel it?" He spoke softly, but firmly. "I can't let that happen. We don't know when Enguerrand will strike. You have to make a decision. Fortunately, he is no threat to King Roland, but the king's days are numbered. It's just you and Stefan. I will protect you." Elizabeth suppressed a sigh and stopped, caught by indecision. What should she do? The king was in poor health. A frivolous wound received during a hunt suddenly worsened and now threatens his life. Nothing was helping. Even Egyptian ointment, on which they had such hopes. If her brother-in-law truly wanted to rule, then she was in trouble. They had never been enemies, but Catherine, his wife, was another matter. "And they have 2 sons, while I have 1. They will destroy him," flashed in her head. Elizabeth turned to the window, staring out into space. "Just say the word." The Black Knight squeezed his hands. "I'll arrange everything. Trust me." He took a step toward her and got uncomfortably close. She could feel his breath on her neck and his eyes on her. "I have no one to lean on," Elizabeth thought uneasily. "In the castle, many people look forward to any unexpected opportunity to shuffle the balance of power. I'm truly in a very vulnerable position. There is no one I can count on. Yesterday's friends are already whispering in the corners." She straightened defiantly, as though to push him back, but second-guessed herself. The Count could be useful, after all. She shouldn't have made any sudden movements. But the Count's gaze was not fixed on Elizabeth's charms, her young skin, her beautiful, sculpted neck with its truly regal carriage of the head. He did not notice or see this beauty. His eyes were riveted to her pearl necklace. Here it was, what he lost a long time ago, 300 years before. His invention, his pride. How did it happen that in an instant it broke, spilled, failed, and disappeared? And here it was now, around her neck, like a common thread of mother of pearl. Who dared steal from Satan? His body heaved and reeked in his dark den. Disturbed by Satan's thoughts, the knight paused, but only for a second. "He has to get it before the sovereign comes. The problem is that she has to give it to him herself, or let him take it off." he thought, choosing his words carefully. Then, after pausing, looking at Liz, he took an uncertain step back. As if assessing whether he was worthy of making her an offer of such a plan, he put his hand in his pocket and pulled out a small, elongated box. "The key word is allow," he grimaced in disgust. "Otherwise, I would have taken it from her corpse." She looked at him in surprise. He flipped the clasp and opened it. There lay an aquamarine necklace of incredible beauty. "It would go wonderfully with this dress," the Count drawled. "She must never find out that he had set it all up. Her thought, not allowing this to be done, will destroy everything." He took the necklace in his hand. Stones of incredible purity and cut refracted in the sunlight, scattering blue drops in different directions. Fascinated, she stared at him and the necklace, unable to come to a decision. If she even thought about it before she left for eternity, it would all be for nothing. Liz had never seen aquamarine so fine. The blue in them was brighter, richer. "There won't be another chance." "They would indeed fit very nicely around my neck, and would go splendidly with this dress," thought Elizabeth. "Moreover, it would go straight to the sovereign, and then I won't be." The Black Knight was losing patience. "Your Majesty, let me try it on you. All the ladies will be speechless when they see you at the ball tomorrow. And, in return, give me your pearl necklace. It will be my talisman, and you can take it whenever you want. It is yours." His hand went to the pearl's clasp. At that moment, Liz whirled and suddenly saw the yellow light in his eyes. She jerked back. The Count's hand froze aimlessly in the air. 1 second split into fractions. A tear glistened in his half-closed eyes. Covering himself with his hat, and bowing low but firmly, he left the hall. It was a failure. He was so close to his goal, but he did not expect her to be so strongly attached to this necklace. "She definitely doesn't want to part with it. But why? Does she know? What can she know? Even the sovereign does not know. Nobody knows but me. This is my invention. No, she will not part with it. So, I need to take it off her." Satan was preparing for Plan B. Chapter 4. What was that? As if something yellow was in the eyes of the Count, thought Elizabeth in confusion. She looked away, and the vision of the blue stones followed in the same direction. She closed her eyes and saw them immediately, but imprinted with small bright white spots in her eyes. Ah, against the backdrop of their brightness, the whole environment changes color. It must be that white does not look so white against such a brilliant blue, she concluded. And the Count's eyes. What color are his eyes? She hesitated. Must be black. An unpleasant thought stung her. She didn't know what color his eyes were. She tried to remember. Here he was on one knee, with his head down, then standing next to her, but very close, and she did not have to look at him from bottom to top. Then he stood behind her, and she saw his reflection in the mirror, the brim of his hat lowered. Elizabeth was amazed. Had she never seen his eyes? But was it important? She rarely looked into the eyes of a subordinate. What was there to see? Come to think of it, She didn't even know the color of the eyes of her maids of honor. Only Agnes, her son's nursemaid's eyes, were blue-gray and soft. Liz moved closer to the mirror and touched the thread of pearls. Against the background of her bright blue dress, the mother of pearl looked darker, with a faint lilac tinge. She had always wondered at the peculiarity of this mother of pearl. It did not change color, but changed hue, absorbing the colors of her outfits. And not just outfits. In moments of great difficulty, her hand automatically touched the pearls, to feel the aura of her surroundings. And that was enough to understand who and what was going on around her. That was the truth, but it wasn't the whole of it. Since childhood, in dealing with people, Liz didn't have to look in their eyes. It was enough to hear their voice, their movement, their scent. How and when did she learn to be guided by everything, and not just by what she saw? "We see what others want us to see, but we do not see what they want to hide from us," say the sages. Her room was next door to that of her father, the King of France. As a child, playing in her room, she often heard conversations, but as a rule did not see the speakers. She knew the voices of her father, mother, servants, relatives. She didn't know others, but by their steps, whispers, breath, rustling of cloaks, spurs ringing, she learned to feel their mood, what they came with, the level of danger. Sometimes she looked quietly from behind a curtain to make sure that the person looked like she imagined. And it was so. Whispers around the corner, behind the curtains, in the yard. Always some kind of whisper. It flowed between the walls on thin threads of air. Only a deaf man can't hear it, she thought. But she was wrong. Only she heard it. Ah, if she knew then, 15 years ago, that her father did not hear all this, she could have protected him. He died at the hands of conspirators. She was small and did not understand what was being said. She only felt that these scattered islets of people, connected by something invisible, inspired fear in her. Their combination had changed here and there. Whispers, the rustle of papers, the muffled clink of coins changing hands. All this was the routine of life enclosed within the thick stone walls of this castle. It had always been so, and it could not be otherwise. But her father was the king, the biggest and strongest. What could threaten him? She realized it was a mistake only when the soft whoosh of metal taken out from the sheath of the blade reached her through the hall separating their bedrooms in the middle of the night. Soon, their grandmother, her father's mother, the Dowager Queen, took and hid her and her older brother, Prince John, in a monastery. She was 8 years old, her brother 16. On the way, Lisa told her everything she had heard that night and before. She didn't know those people. She had never met them before. Their cloaks smelled of cold, of rain, and their boots creaked differently. The Queen Mother sat silent. Dressed all in black, she thought about what Lisa had told her. She was surprised at the details. She looked closely at Lisa and said, "You're right. They came from the north, from another country." After a moment's thought, she took out a jewel box. From its bottom, she pulled out a velvet black pouch. Lisa stared at the contents of the box. From the bag, Grandma pulled out a pearl necklace and put it around Lisa's neck. It was almost black, and Lisa didn't like it very much, feeling even a little frightened. Then Grandma said, "Lisa, wear this necklace always. Never take it off, not even for 1 minute. It is not simple. Not everyone can wear it. I couldn't. But you seem to have inherited the talent of my grandmother, the Queen of France, Yolanda. She wore it all her life. We believe that our people did not suffer during the plague of 1347, when entire cities died out for 4 years, thanks to her and this necklace. We don't know where we got it, but it was a long time ago. Perhaps from one of the captured chests during one of the wars, along with many other things. Remembering all this, Lisa touched the necklace. It's always been like this, but now something has changed. Could she trust the Count? He was confusing her. His voice was trustworthy. His letter was irrefutable evidence of her brother-in-law's treachery, and his feelings for her are understandable. All of this was so, but her aura was rebelling. May 2019.